Grandma Mona, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to greet each and every one of you. A good day, a good time. Welcome to this panel. And I would like to share with you the teachings and of my original instructions as an Indigenous person. All over the world, there are people like us as Indigenous people who have never left our home, never left the place that we understand to be our place of origin, the place where we come from. And so in that understanding of our origins or our original teachings, we've been told that there are ways to have a relationship. And for me, I am Havasupai, the people of the blue-green water from down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon in Arizona. And that's my mother's side. And on my father's side, I come from the Hopi Pueblo Nation, which is the people of peace. And the way that I was taught was that, we are all related. I'm always told, when I was growing up, I was always told, that's your relative. My mother would tell me everything that comes from the water is your relative. And when you have a relationship, there's an understanding that you hold them near, dear, and how you relate to them in what we say is a good way. In the Hopi way, I was told, when you come to meet someone, when you enter a room, when you're walking down the path or in the village or in the street, you meet someone. When you approach them, what you do is you hold your hand up. And what that is that it's this message to the other person that I come to you in peace. My hand is open. I bear no ill will. I bear no arms or weapons against you. That's how we come to one another in a peaceful manner. So we offer our hand up like this. And so when we meet each other, that's the way we do. We offer our hand out and offer our hand to the other person and a handshake. And I was told that sometimes, that's that may be the only thing that you might offer to someone. But by coming and meeting each other in that peaceful manner, with a good heart, with a good mind, and you greet each other that way, then there is this exchange of energy of a good feeling, good energy. And that may be what that other person may need at that moment, to be greeted in a good way. And it uplifts their spirit, it uplifts their heart. And in our way, we say it's like a blessing. It's a blessing you give. And in that way, we also greet even the day. With the first time the sun came out this morning, as soon as I got into its light, I stopped. I reached my hand to greet it and welcome and give thanks for all that life offers. The basic foundation of life, of water, air, the sun, Mother Earth, to receive it and give thanks, have gratitude, and in that way, have a good relationship. And that's what, that's like a basic foundation of having relationship. And by creating this kind of energy and relationship, then we can demonstrate to our elders, to our young people, our children, our babies, how to be a good human being. That's the very basic in this concept of we are all related. And so if we could begin that way to each and every one of you that are joining us today, my fellow panelists, we all come together with this good heart, good mind, and a good way to share with you these understandings that we have. And the little film we just saw, it was beautiful to see that that connection across the generations, and every one of them, you could see the beautiful smiles, the beautiful energy, and the way it uplifted them from the eldest to the youngest, and in this beautiful relationship through the sounds of this music. And in that way, it sends a vibration out, that beautiful vibration, just like a simple offering of a handshake, of greeting, of I come to you in peace. Let's go forward and have a good day sharing this time together. Blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandma Mona. That was wonderful. When we first met amongst all of the co-panelists, Truton said to all of us that it's wrong to speak before our elders. And that is why we opened the space after the song with the words of Grandma Mona. I'm incredibly... I am incredibly honored to be following you and also to be opening the space with all of you here. It's incredible to see so many people, over 100. And I also want to give credit to the video, which must all go to Kinan Tegar. He's an indigenous youth of the Dayak Iban Sungai Utik community of West Kalimantan. And the link to their video will now go in the chat as well. I also give thanks to the Indonesian friends of JKPP for sharing this video with us all, and who cannot all attend because it's rather late there. Now, as many of you notice who are joining you now, we have in the conference a anti-harassment policy, which will also be shared in the chat for all of you to click and read. And hopefully it's good that there's an anti-harassment policy. We're very much in favor of this. Now, this is a roundtable on decolonization and environmental peacebuilding. Elaine, all the thanks must go to her for bringing the space and opening and bringing us all together to create this dialogue. We, between 12 people, want to do this a little bit differently. We will be sharing lived experiences and stories in little short snippets across three themes. One on wisdom and relationships, the other on ancestral wisdom, what's visible, what's invisible, the challenges that we face, and of course, what we'd like to see moving forward. While there's so many of us, verbal Q&A session might not be possible, but please, you are able and free to communicate with speakers in the chat. This, of course, is also a dialogue. Decolonization, environmental peacebuilding, decolonization in the grander dialogue is something that we're all confronted with. And for this reason, this roundtable is just a snippet of the continuation of that conversation. And it all started in the last conference, and I welcome Elaine to give us a little bit more of that history. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you. And thank you also to Grandma Mona for your words of wisdom in the beginning of this session. I want to place today's roundtable in a little bit of a historical story. So for those of you who were all here at the first Environmental Peacebuilding Conference, you may have participated in a plenary session about early linkages in the world of environmental peace, conflict, and security that I had the great honor to sit on amongst a lot of the kind of bigger names that we know, which is quite intimidating at the time. But I did speak to one thing there, and it was about this idea of environmental peace building with big P versus little p. So we think about international development, oftentimes, they talk about the big D development, internationalized, globalized, oftentimes neoliberal, commercialized. But we have the same problem, the dark side of environmental peace building as well, right? So how do we think about environmental peace building, not as big P, but little p environmental peace building? And so I think this session, spoke to something along those lines, trying to show us what little p environmental peace building looks like, and to give some of us an opportunity to kind of share the stories of that in a space that they might not normally be invited into. So connecting this to that event previously, and also to share stories that are completely kind of opposite of that very common kind of environmental peace building that we know and recognize, right? The peace parks, post-conflict UNEP assessments, the combating illegal resource trade, et cetera, whatever it is that many people are working on that we think of as environmental peace building, and now trying to recenter ourselves. So, we talk often about how do we bring these voices into the circle? How do we bring these stories, give them voice? But actually, I think what needs to happen is that we need to shift ourselves, our center, so that those stories are not on the margin anymore, but we now have, those front and center for us. The other thing I think that's really important to be open to little p environmental peace building is to stop asking all of those stories and the people who are engaged in little p environmental peace building to constantly be translating that wisdom and those practices into the sort of westernized colonial systems of knowledge and practices. So to come to know this in a way that's very different. So I'm inviting everyone today to kind of silence the analytical brain. We've been doing a lot of that in this conference over the last few days, but to allow that then to open up the sort of the heart and the other mind space, to learn from the wisdom of the stories that we're about to hear, and to integrate that so that we can then embody it into our way of being. So with that, I want to start the first collection of stories, which is all about ancestral wisdom and our relationships, relations with all beings. And kicking us off is Chukten Wagner.
OCM, Heiska, thank you, Elaine. OCM Nastela CM, Genuite Quinchquel Constatia Kuchil, Chiokten, Sinisnat Chalates, and Utlersanich, Aithla, CM, Yesin Techel Swahela. I am Chiokten from Husainich Nation, and good feelings in my heart today to be here. I'm thankful and good to see everybody here. Yeah, I just want to share some stories from our family, from my mom. And I want to thank Auntie Mona Palaka for that wisdom she delivered in such a eloquent way. Our old ways of our people, I believe, are of utmost importance in this world to understand peace, to have peace in this world. The environment is something that is a more of a colonial construct, that we would have something out there that is not us. You know, it's an interesting idea that something outside of our own body would be foreign to us, and we'd have to give it a different name. We simply call her Mother Earth, or Chachatangashta. And my mom, Sayeta, you know, she was born in the Chakaitlang, in the smokehouse, longhouse of our people, and raised with many elders, and blessed with those teachings from her mom and her father. And I wanted to share one story that she shared with me many times. Every morning she would go to the water. She would go to the water at our creek called Quanis. It means humpback whale or gray whale. And right in Hushotlup, in our land of the maple tree in West Saanich, here on southern tip of Vancouver Island, what they call Vancouver Island. And she'd go there every morning to bathe. But her mom wouldn't just say, okay, kids get in the water. You know, it wasn't like that, like it would be today. But they had to be quiet, and they had to wait for their mom, my grandmother. She would bend down, and my mom says in translation, because my mom never spoke English till she was 8 years old, and my grandmother didn't speak any English. My mom could say everything you needed to say in the language, you know, as an 8-year-old. And grandma would bend down and touch the water, she says, and she would say, "We do not come here to disturb you, Siem Thon and Kwa. We do not come here to disturb you, sacred, cold, healing water. I would only ask that you strengthen the spirit of my children." And she would hold her hand just barely touching the surface of the water, and let the spirit of that water know her intention before she would let speaking to its spirit to a living people. And even the water is people to us, and it deserves our respect, and it deserves that communication. And not till she spoke to the spirit of that water would she let her children go inside of its body. And I tell people that's called a good relationship. Have a good relationship with every single every people out there. And because we've had a good relationship with every being, every different people. We don't even have a general word for animal. We never lump them all together. We would name all the different people, the deer people, the bear people. have a good relationship with the tree people, the water people, all of them. And this world can be in a good way, can be in a peaceful way. Wanted to share another story of medicine plant gathering that my mom would do with her mom again, Chokskamat, her grandmother. And they would go to the, well, my grandmother was a midwife and a herbalist for the village. And every morning, you know, she would go and help people and work with them and give life into this world, and helping other village members bring that life into the world. And there was a patient she had that none of the medicines worked. And so my mom and her went to the gathering place, and my mom said she spoke to the plants in the language and asked them to show themselves that they would be good medicine for her family in our language that came from these medicine plants, from these medicine people, the plant people. And with that, my mom said no wind, and these certain plants started moving, and nothing else moved but a certain group of plants, and they clacked their leaves together. She could even hear their leaves dancing, clacking. And those were the ones that healed that patient. And my grandmother gave words to these plants of a sacred promise to have a sacred relationship with every family of every being that the Creator ever put here, that our human families made time immemorial ago when humans were brand new here. Gifted that, we made that sacred promise to the Creator and every being. And it got brought down to these few words: I would only take part of your family to help my family. Meaning that family would exist until the end of time. That family of particular people, those particular plant peoples, would exist until the end of time because of a sacred promise to have a sacred relationship. So inside of our knowing, Indigenous education, Indigenous governance, lies these knowings, as Mona very eloquently explained, and I'm just sharing it from our culture here in our Coast Salish territories, that these have allowed us to co-create paradise here on these lands for tens of thousands of years, so that not one ancient tree was killed. We very intelligently and wisely understood how to harvest from them, and so that we would not disrespect the home of the deer people, the salmon people, the eagle people, all of these other people. Thousands and thousands of people live inside of the animal people's home. And when you go in and start destroying it, you disrespect them. And disrespect is not something that simply goes in one direction. It is secular, and it'll come home to your own family, is our knowing. And in the world, we're beginning to see that. The disrespect of colonialism that has been delivered to our sacred Mother Earth. It's beginning to come home to touch our own families. And that's our knowing, that this place is a spiritual world, and we have to treat it and care for it as we would care for our own child. Love it like we would love our own child. And then I'll share one last teaching our old people would say, because we are tree people, we're salmon people, canoe people, longhouse people, and potlatching people of giving, sharing. And so one of our grandmothers said, stand together like the trees and lift each other up. Stand together like the trees and lift each other up. And that's a way of peace. And that's a way of creating good relationship, because the circle of life lifts us up, and we should be, our role as a human being and our knowing from Indigenous people was brought from elders raising children. Elders raising children for tens of thousands of years, not the parents. I bet there's some parents that love that idea. And so that bank of wisdom that the elders have been bestowing that to the child from the first breath until That child is now in that bank of wisdom, raising the child again. It's the perfect education system where you know your human responsibility. You know your place amongst all beings in this world that way. And you understand respect. And then the other part of that, I believe, is the matriarchal governance system, that the life giver is the one that it has the last voice spoken, the life giver, the sacred feminine, because they've had their hands, the women have their hands in Mother Earth, getting that medicine, understanding life, giving life from their body, 13 cycles of the moon, causing enormous abundance on Mother Earth, moving the tides, 13 cycles of water moving in a life giver's body, causing life to come from their body. They know life intimately. Now they speak for life. Now they fiercely protect life. And our way is that they give direction to our society, and they point us towards life and respect only, and no other directions. So in my feelings, I feel we must return to these indigenous education systems, governance systems, find a way to bring them into the colonial system, to start decolonizing our education, start decolonizing our governance, and return to an era of life, an era of respect in this world, which truly is peace with all beings. Osiem, Haiska.
Thank you so much, Chukten. I want to bring next, carrying another story related to the wisdoms of water, Anvesha and Tuta.
Thanks so much, Aline. I'll quickly share my screen. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating, and I can only talk from a place of being a researcher who has had the fortune to work with indigenous and tribal communities in northeast of India, in Assam. And this is particularly on a water management system, a 120 years old water management system that the people managed to revive and get going in absence of any state irrigation facility. And the reason I share my screen is because I wanted to show you, this is where I come from, the land of the Brahmaputra, the meandering river. And the meandering river, while in all its glory, supports the lives of probably 1 million or more people who live there, it is also a river of wrath. It's a floodplain causing floods year after year. But what has happened is there has been only technocratic fixes. So these are hydraulic engineers trying to go build dams, but people who actually live on the banks of those rivers know that most of these ways of damming the river and creating of this embankment does more harm, and it's not sustainable. And it has been documented in the research. But I will talk about this particular river that flows from Bhutan to India. And this is a transboundary irrigation system. And this is again on in an area that has had over 20 years of ethnic conflict. But what has happened is when these rivers are channeled, they are called the dongs, the irrigation. So here you can find some details about the dongs and how these are managed by the communities themselves. And what usually happens is that you have a committee that is constituted across different ethnic groups who actually are in conflict with each other, but they come together to manage this water resource. And it's not really easy because they often do not have information coming from upstream Bhutan. So what this has led to is the emergence of citizen science. It has led to the coming together of ancestral wisdom of managing water together and to keeping the fields, the agricultural fields still going despite not having any irrigation system. So, so this actually turns the notion that nationalized and internationalized policies and paradigms can have on Earth system local communities. Because what is happening is that this is kind of a local one-on-one people's connection that is making it work. So to give you an example, in case of a flash flood happening on the other side in Bhutan, and if it was going to go to the to India, you would have to do an early warning system, which technically would be Thimphu writing to the district head of the place in Bhutan, who then would write to New Delhi. New Delhi would go to Assam, and Assam would go to probably the local NGO, who would then have to contact the person who's living in that area. But surpassing all of this, we have WhatsApp as a people-to-people early warning system. And that is because of historical forms of connections between these groups of people living in India and across the border in Bhutan. And this has really led to show us the importance of subnational people-to-people networks in community management of common pool resources. And this is also very important a story because these communities, this is a proper conflict landscape. What you see here has been, spaces of insurgency, counter-insurgency for about 30 years, but yet people have come together to make this work, to share their ancient wisdoms about how to manage water. And this really has shown us that all these technocratic interventions often tend to fail if they do not take into account people's ancestral wisdoms of water management. So I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anvisha. It's a great way to be thinking about how we can integrate ancestral wisdom. And next, I want to bring up my colleague from the Africa Interest Group, Usaini.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you, Thomas. Such a privilege to be here discussing this very important topic of environmental peace building and learning from this amazing group, engaging later with the audience. Thank you for your time. Much indigenous knowledge we are getting here, Anisha. If I may, Grandma Mona Polak, I would like to highlight the old instructions from the ancestors, teaching to stay in balance with Mother Nature, the sacred, the spirit. Or Chokten, if I may, please, I would like to highlight the signage or teaching of cycle of life to stay in good relationship with Mother Nature. And both of them will say, have respect for the spirit of the water. Similarities here in Songhai indigenous knowledge in the Liptako Gurma of the South, where the Harakwe, who is the god of the river, is given respect, the honor given by the subgroup of Sorko, who are the fisher. And between the fisher and the Harakwe, we have the wise Songenche who holds the secret of the water, the land, the sky, the wind, the fire. Between the animal herders, the Alkurkei or the Alfare, the farmers, the forests, the Ganjo, and the Dongo, who is the god of the thunder and the god of the rain. There is the Zima, who is the expert botanist in the village, or the guru healer. We have a social and welfare redistribution through a gram and a social economic welfare that they call Bogu. So yes, Elaine, I love your early intervention. We should, the environmental peace building field in practice and in theory should include the indigenous knowledge and practices. But as a environmental peacebuilding researcher or practitioner, we need to be careful about the information given. Who is giving the information? What's the main aim or the real aim of the narrative? Whom we getting the information from desk research to the field research. So yes, again, there should be transfer of knowledge between the environmental peacebuilding community and the indigenous people. I will come back in if I have time to debate. I'll go deeper. But in the specific case of the Sorai indigenous knowledge, which information we're getting? Is the information we're getting or the information we're trying to incorporate in our practice in the field or in the research, maybe the desk research or the field research interview, is the information is alienated by globalization, by neocolonialism, by colonization, by slavery, by imposed religion. As we may know, the north of Sahel knew the Berber and Arab invaders who imposed religion, Islam, and the southern of the Sahel, which had first contact with the slave shift. And I will stop here. I may come back for more details. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Oseni. We now go to the next section that we have, which is stories that give voice to what's invisible, stories of challenges that are being faced, stories of resistance, and stories of overcoming. Opening this section, we have Giovanni. Giovanni, please, take the floor.
Yes, thank you very much for the privilege of participating in this discussion. I was asked to share with you indigenous peoples as environmental defenders and what the role indigenous peoples play in the protection of nature around them. Throughout history, it has been the resistance of indigenous peoples themselves against colonial projects and their assertion of rights to land that humanity at present enjoy the current breadth and depth of ecosystem services. Indigenous peoples' territories contain 33% of intact forest landscape globally, but it is estimated that these areas hold 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. These areas are considered key in preventing deforestation and reversing global warming. This is apart from the ecological services these territories provide in terms of water supply for hundreds of thousands of agricultural lands that in turn provide food security for millions of people. A threat to indigenous territories is a threat to the environment, and a threat to the indigenous territories and the environment is a threat to food security. So what makes indigenous peoples environmental defenders? Defending the environment is intertwined with the history of indigenous peoples' struggles to assert ways of life, customary laws, and traditions. Indigenous peoples equate tradition with life principle. Tradition is not something only that you take elsewhere, but tradition is inextricably linked with land, sacred groves, burial grounds, watershed, and rivers. Therefore, tradition is about lands. Indigenous tradition is about lands where villages thrive and persist. And as people interact with the nature around them, spiritual and cultural values that develop through time are then attached on parts of the territory to be designated as indigenous community conserved areas and to be governed under customary law. These community protected areas are more prized than earthly goods. It is something to be passed on intact to the next generation in a continuity that is like life itself. This continuity as a life principle is the main reason for the vehemence of a people to stay put against land dispossession and development aggression. The defense of land and nature around them is essentially to prevent such life cycle from being broken. Because to break that cycle means only one thing, that's death. Given that indigenous lands are the last frontiers for modern decolonization through large-scale extractives, often formulated in the guise of national development and implemented without the free, prior, and informed consent of affected communities, defense of the environment is not without risk. We are faced by powerful forces. So proponents of projects that seek to control natural resources within territories of indigenous peoples have seen it fit to criminalize indigenous peoples' rights through red tagging. In the latest legal briefing by the International Commission of Jurists, red tagging is defined as the practice of labeling those perceived to be threats as terrorists and or as communists without substantial proof of any unlawful conduct and due process. Indigenous peoples' expression of their right to determine their own economic, social, and cultural status is not terrorism. Legitimate dissent or activism is not terrorism. The right to self-determination as expressed by indigenous peoples since time immemorial contributed much to the United Nations instruments, including the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples of 2007, where the term indigenous peoples with an S, peoples, occur 113 times. The United Nations Charter, where its preamble states, we the peoples, again with an S, peoples. And of course, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which provides for the protection of fundamental human rights of all peoples. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights that provide for right to self-determination of all peoples. Article 1 of both covenants defines self-determination as the right of all peoples to freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Indigenous peoples included. Despite the Philippines being a signatory to these treaties and covenants, the legal briefing by the International Commission of Jurists states that red tagging has been applied with greater intensity under the Duterte administration. Duterte meaning the present Philippine president. This legal briefing follows the findings by a London-based global witness, which reported that the Philippines rank as the deadliest country in Asia for environmental and land defenders in 2020 and the third deadliest in the world. From 2016 to 2021, incidents of attacks against indigenous peoples include 90 extrajudicial killings, 160 frustrated extrajudicial killings, 6 enforced disappearances, 227 illegal arrests, detention and abduction, and 27 cases of torture. The red tagging of indigenous peoples as environmental defenders and the killings that followed did not fail to get the attention of the United States Congress, so that in a January 24, 2022 letter entitled Call for Action Against Philippine Human Rights Violations, a group of United States members of Congress, led by Congresswoman Susan Wild of Pennsylvania, wrote to the State Department, and I quote, "State forces continue to use red tagging, a practice in which activists and human rights groups are demonized and characterized as terrorists as a preemptive move leading up to targeted assassinations, arrest without cause, or other human rights abuses." In conclusion, it is to indigenous peoples and their defense of the environment that we owe a lot. As I mentioned in the beginning, the territories of indigenous peoples globally coincide with 80% of the planet's biodiversity, including 33% of the world's intact landscape forests. This is key in saving the planet to mitigate, if not prevent, the deadly climate change impacts like floods and massive erosions. I call on support for indigenous peoples in defense of the environment because this is a legacy that our present generation can provide for future generation. That is a livable planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. That's incredibly relevant and incredibly important that you share this. I'm so happy that you decided to talk about this, especially with the recent developments in the Philippines with the Defenders Bill and all the politics that's surrounding that in Parliament, etc. So thank you very much. Next, we have Eugenia. Eugenia, please.
Thank you very much. I'm thankful to have been invited to this panel. The story I want to share is linked to another type of violence, to the one that Giovanni has shared with us before, which has to do with one of the tragedies that indigenous peoples are facing, which is physical violence and direct violence to their livelihoods, lives, and cultures. There is another form of violence that indigenous peoples face, which is cultural violence. And it's very similar. I'm linking to what Husseini also was referring to. All the forces that impede and make impossible that indigenous people's knowledge and wisdoms are visible to the wider society. This has to do with colonial practices, that has to do with the form of the way that knowledge is produced, the way that modernity is imposed as basically the way forward. And this has direct consequences on the way indigenous peoples struggle on a day-to-day basis with conservation policies, development projects in their lands. And tragically also, the loss of knowledge among young indigenous peoples who are increasingly subject to other values, other worldviews that start creating tensions internally in communities. What do we do as academics like me that are not necessarily indigenous peoples that are formed in modern institutions like universities? Do we have a role to play? Can we do something to change this reality? And this is the story that I want to share with you today, is how I have shifted gradually in my academic practice from working from a large P peace building to a small P peace building that tries to engage more with a decolonial practice. A decolonial practice that what it seeks to do is to really help strengthen and revitalize those knowledges that have been made invisible by modernity in our educational institutions. So nowadays, I work and I defend the big P. I think the big P should still continue being a big P because there's a space and there's a need for working in the boundaries and to defend that space. Because the other big P tends to reproduce power relations that reproduce and create the cultural violence that we're seeing. And the story, how I got here was after a long while of working within the dominant structures, trying to create dialogues between different forms of knowledge that are actually quite disparate from one another. There are huge power relations that impede a dialogue and equal relations in equal conditions to take place. And I realized the need to create the conditions from dialogue through the teachings of indigenous peoples that I work with in Latin America, who made me realize that they don't want to engage in dialogue very often because they feel that if they engage in dialogues of knowledge with dominant institutions like conservation agencies, development organizations, government politicians, they will come out badly from those dialogues because they themselves often don't have the ways of entering into a dialogue where their own knowledge and views are strong enough within themselves. So the indigenous peoples that I've been working with in Latin America over the 30 years have taught me that before indigenous peoples can enter into dialogue with other forms of knowledge, it's hugely important to create spaces within communities, within indigenous peoples themselves, between elders, between young people, to clarify their own perspectives, to revitalize their own forms of knowledge, to reconstruct their histories, which have been made invisible by modernity, by these colonial forces that Husseini was telling us about before. So the work that I do nowadays is a lot, rather than trying to understand conflicts, trying to create dialogues between actors that are actually in very different power conditions, to start much further, much more back in the behind the scenes, creating those internal dialogues to help indigenous peoples revitalize, reconstruct their knowledges, and reconstruct their histories through research practices that give power to communities to do the research themselves through methodologies that we can construct together. And only after those processes have taken place, then eventually I have seen that dialogues of more equitable conditions can happen. I'll leave it there. I just wanted to introduce this idea of creating the conditions for dialogue before we expect indigenous peoples to confront the huge power asymmetries that are out there in this very asymmetrical world that we live in.
Thank you, Yokinia, for bringing up also the aspect of cultural violence, which is of course so incredibly important. Slow violence and other violences that are not so prevalent. Next we have Seda and Njeri, please. The floor is yours to speak about everyday forms of environmental peace building.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be in a panel with this caliber of people. So I am honored to be part of this. And when I was thinking about how to link what I was going to say with the work that I do as a researcher, researching peace building, I thought that I would go back to my own roots. And I thought of an incredible woman, Professor Wangari Maathai. So if my name does not betray me, I am Kenyan. I was born and raised in Kenya, and I'm currently working in the UK. And what the story that strikes me and that relates to what I think about everyday peace in the presence, in everyday peace building in the midst of the debate on the environment and environmental peace building, is this idea of putting the pieces together. So in the 70s, for those who don't know the story of Wangari Maathai, in the 70s, Wangari became aware of the ecological decline, and the watersheds were drying up, streams were disappearing, and the desert expanding south from the Sahara. On visit to her rural home, she found that the streams that she had known as a child had dried up. Vast forests also had been cleared for farms and plantations, and these had drained, and the soils were degrading. The soil and water was degrading. She also began to make connections with women and the stories that she was hearing from the women, listening to them talk about the water, about the energy, about nutrition. And she realized, or she figured, that this was linked to the environment. So she came to the understanding about the linkage between the environment degradation and felt the need that was coming from the communities. She hit on the idea of the Greenbelt movement, which we all know. Fast forward to 2004, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I remember reading the headlines. The headlines were asking about, what has peace got to do with trees? That was one of the headlines that shouted. Wangari's most, the critiques about her Nobel Peace Prize are just a reminder of where we are today. If we link about where we are today in terms of what we're experiencing and the questions that were being asked. So her Nobel Prize was awarded during a time of global concerns, as the concerns like we are living into today. Terrorism, nuclear proliferation, were all, they were all seen as areas where we should be thinking about, where the prestigious award should have gone. But it was awarded to a peace activist, an activist, and not necessarily known within the peace idea. When I was growing up, I knew Wangari Maathai as that crazy woman, as she was portrayed on the media, who was everything about trees. And this image was because there was resistance, and in her being, in especially her feminism, and her being a woman during a very, very, very difficult political time. But the other story that I want to link up, and that relates to what I currently do, is to answer the question on what does tree planting have to do with peace. The answer to that newspaper headline can be found in the Amazon, for example, in Haiti, in China, in Africa, where deforestation and erosion and climate change have changed the conditions of life for millions of people. But cleverly, Wangari, in her narratives, uses a three-legged stool. If you think about a stool, to kind of bring the debates together. She argued and she believed that the stool was very symbolic in times of trying to bring her activism, her ideas of peace, and all that entails to explain the relevance of her ideas. And she says that if you think about a stool, it's got three legs, and one represents good management of our natural resources, as we've been hearing. The second one is about equitable distribution of the same and a sense of accountability. And the third one represents good governance, a democratic state that respects humankind so that we can have dignity and human beings. So the third represents peace. The base on which you sit on is development. And that's how we link, and that's how we think about, we should be thinking about environmental peace building. It's everything. It is the everyday actions of the communities. It is the everyday actions of resistance within that space, of our agitation towards the environmental peace building. To decolonize peace building is to think about how we communicate using our everyday stories, our everyday narratives of women like Wangari Maathai did. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We now have Archana Soreng, who will grace us with her space.
Johar everyone, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy and glad that I got this opportunity to participate in this discussion on decolonizing and environmental peace building. And I would like to share my insights on environmental peace building and how I see decolonization. I would like to say, as a young Indigenous woman, I strongly feel that environmental peace building should emphasize on the injustice done on the Indigenous people. Like while growing up, we have witnessed as a young Indigenous person, as well as an Indigenous person, not only me, but my communities way before me have been always told that our culture and tradition is savage, is backward, and we need to be developed and we need to adopt to the developmental paradigm. But if we see the context of now, the environmental discourse, which is currently going, where we slowly see that the world is recognizing the traditional knowledge and practices of Indigenous people. And the world is also recognizing the contribution of Indigenous people in terms of biodiversity conservation, climate action, and also ecosystem restoration. So in this entire discourse, I feel that once we were questioned about our identity, we were questioned about our way of living, we were questioned about our food patterns, and we were made to feel inferior about our traditional knowledge and practices. And now the world is slowly embracing. And I feel the peace building on environmental discourse needs to start by acknowledging that how embracing of identity of indigenous youth is crucial, and that needs to be ensured through making enabling environment, and that needs to be ensured by motivating and instilling confidence amongst indigenous youth and making them realize that we need to be proud of ourselves, we need to be proud of our identity, we need to be proud of our roots, which itself is a journey of ours which we have been struggling in this entire developmental discourse. So I strongly feel that when we look upon in terms of participation of indigenous youth in this environmental discourse, it also needs to be highlighted. It also needs to be acknowledged that how this penetration of inferiorization of indigenous community, their traditional knowledge and practices has been ingrained in the communities over generation to generation. And now when we are slowly recognizing their contribution, it's really important to undo the injustice, to acknowledge the injustice. At the same time, I would also like to emphasize that how the governmental structures, how the governance systems, both in the national and the international level, leads to conflict in the grassroots levels. I would like to share one of my insights of my field visit when I had interacted with an indigenous leader in my community. And when I visited the indigenous leader said that we resisted the plantation of trees in our village. And I was like, why did you resist the plantation of trees in your village? So the indigenous leader told that they had brought fruit trees for plantation, and that's why we resisted. And I asked, what were the fruit trees? Why did you resist? And then the indigenous leader told that they had brought jackfruit trees and they had brought mango trees. So even though I am an indigenous person, but given interacting with an indigenous leader from a different geographical region, even I did not understand why plantation of a fruit tree was problematic for that indigenous leader and the community. I further went on to ask, like, what was the problem in terms of the fruit trees? And then the indigenous leader told that if we grow jackfruit trees and mango trees in the periphery of our village, then wild boars will come, the monkeys will come, and the elephants will come to eat those fruit of the trees. And this will lead to wildlife and human conflict. And that is when I realized that the governance system or the implementation of the ecosystem restoration practices or the biodiversity conservation policies which are made in the top level, if it is not taken into consideration the local ground realities, it can lead to huge conflict. So it's a thing of where we are trying to make sure that we are restoring ecosystem, but at the grassroots level, we are further leading to more conflict. And that is when the indigenous leader also said that it would be really important for us to not have these fruit trees, but rather have trees like sal trees, which is really beneficial for this region, for the soil, as well as it has value in terms of our livelihood practices. And that's when I realized that if we reach out to the indigenous leaders, if we make sure that these indigenous leaders are part of the policy making processes, if we are making a process where we are reaching out to the indigenous people and the local communities, and that is where I feel these stakeholders are really crucial in terms of environmental peace building and decolonizing of environmental peace building, because it's really important to highlight the grassroots realities. And the grassroots realities can only be highlighted when we are having different stakeholder consultation, which again brings down for me to reiterate that why and how free, prior and informed consent is really, really crucial in terms of indigenous peoples' territory, and in terms of ensuring that the indigenous people are have the say and being able to make decision in terms of our area. And which also brings down to me to the fact saying that for me as an indigenous person, like land, forest, and our territories is a source of our identity and culture. For me, we are not mere part of nature, but we are nature. And when our relationship of nature with nature is distorted by extractive developmental projects, it not only creates conflict in our region in terms of our source of livelihood, in terms of health, but it also creates a vicious circle where there is loss of land, where there is migration, where there is displacement, and where there is loss of our traditional knowledge and practices, which hampers our way of conserving forest, which hampers our process and our traditional knowledge in terms of contributing to climate action. And that's why I feel this entire vicious circle of non-recognition of rights and extractive developmental projects needs to be taken into consideration when we are talking about peace building and environmental peace building. I would like to end by saying that for me, environmental peace building means that we recognize the contribution of indigenous people and local communities, those who are contributing immensely towards climate action, environmental restoration process. And it's really important that we emphasize on human rights-based approach in terms of environmental peace building rooted in justice. We emphasize that the rights of the indigenous people over the land, forest, and territories are recognized and implemented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Archana. That was really wonderful. And I think it's the perfect segue into a little break. While I know we're all infatuated here with the stories that we are listening to, being blessed with, this next song is actually a little interlude. It is produced by the Nilgiris, particularly vulnerable tribal groups federation. Oh, it's the wrong 1 minute. Sorry, apologies for that. Elaine, I will send you the correct link. It's quite a powerful song, so some of you may have to reduce your volume before it starts. However, it's sung by Lakshmi, who is one of the members of a particular vulnerable tribal group. It's called the Piniya. Please. Elaine, do you have the right video though? I think this is the one we started with. Apologies. I've sent the link in the bottom. Thank you so much.
Hope you all enjoyed that, and thank you, Tomas, for putting the link in the chat for everyone who wants to take that forward. For our last section of stories or segment of stories, we wanted to share a few things about what we would like to see moving forward. So together are Christy and Barbara coming up next.
Okay, well, hi everyone. I think I can speak for me and Christy that we are extremely honored and extremely privileged to contribute to this discussion and to share our own experiences in the struggle to decolonize environmental peace building. So in the middle of all of the inspiring and powerful stories that we have heard here today, we want to share our experience about being students and being teachers, learning and also co-producing knowledge about the environment and about peace. We are both researchers that have accompanied the emergence of the field of environmental peace building, but we are also teachers of it. And we have a course on environmental peace building for the students of peace studies at Lund University in the south of Sweden. So our experience with teaching environmental peace building is that of a very dynamic process. How do you teach about a field of both theory and practice that is extremely dynamic and that is constantly evolving and transforming as well? So we have decided to approach it through a decolonial and a feminist perspective, because we understand that because this is a very dynamic and fast-growing field, that there are many opportunities and potential for talking about larger systemic transformations relating to the environment and to peace, and then with a focus on global environmental justice. And what this entails is to be constantly challenging and questioning hegemonic ways of understanding, of knowing, of producing knowledge, and how we relate to each other, and especially with our students. So the focus of our talk today is about the opportunities to engage environmental peace building in a praxis of critical and radical transformative processes.
So in shaping our curricula, what we wanted to share is where we started with a reflection about how we see examples of environmental peace building. And where I come from, in the area that has been named Wisconsin and Minnesota, government and private companies are not infrequently at odds with local communities. We've seen violence accompanying the building of oil pipelines affecting the land as well as many indigenous groups. And these are pictures that we're sharing from recent protests against the building of Line 3, a pipeline for tar sands crossing treaty territories as it passes from Alberta, Canada to Superior, Wisconsin. And this was sort of the starting point for where Barbara and I were thinking about what environmental peace building means to us and who we think of as actors in environmental peace building, not only as those who might build peace parks or take an approach with government and NGOs, but also maybe those on the front lines resisting these violences, violence against the environment, against the people, against ways of knowing, and various visions of peace. And we wanted to bring these stories from water protectors and environmental defenders into our learning and teaching about peace, and especially about environmental peace building. Because in this broad field, we talk about often environmental peace building as this overlap between theory and practice, or research and practice, as Barbara said. And so we wondered, in our role with teaching, what is our position with all of this? We started trying to teach about the environment, about peace in a critical praxis. Within environmental justice and conflict transformation literature, critical theories have given us tools for pointing to injustices, for pointing to complex structures of violence. So we've used feminist theories and decolonial theories as tools to understand these violences. But a praxis means that we can't stop at theory. We also need reflection and action. We learn through reflection and action. And these steps are also needed, or need theory. So in our classroom, we're using education as a tool for this praxis of transformation, trying to decolonize environmental peace building, and also more broadly, peace education. And this approach has added so much to our classrooms, bringing different ways of knowing, different worldviews, experiences of peace, meanings of violence, and understandings of justice.
Yes, and one thing that me and Christy always talk about, and when we reflect about what is our role as both researchers and teachers, and why we are doing this type of research and this type of work that we're doing, and we always come back to how our own lived experiences are the reason why we have chosen to work in academia and to become teachers as well. To share a little bit about my story, I come from Brazil, from a region of the country that's very rich in minerals. My region has been the site of extraction of gold, iron ore, aluminum, and uranium for centuries, since colonial times. However, as we know, this exploitation does not end with the end of direct colonization. One of the pictures that I have brought here is that of the city of Brumadinho, where in January 2019, the dam of an iron ore mining exploded and devastated the ecosystem and the cities along the way. 300 people died and many more are still missing. And that has affected not only those communities, but the whole country as well, in mourning for this disaster. But my intention with bringing a decolonial perspective into peace building is in challenging the hegemonic narrative that peace can be achieved through the intensification of extractivist activities. Mining is an extremely violent process that harms not only the earth, but the communities that are caught up in the sacrifice zones. Challenging positive benefits of extractivism by contesting the goal of development and capitalist expansion, we want to introduce the idea that the struggle of local, indigenous, and traditional communities in fighting against mining projects in their lands should be considered an act of peace building. By rejecting extractivist narratives and by promoting an alternative way to relate to the environment and to each other, we want to show that different types of actors can also be agents of transformative change towards peace. We want, with this, to broaden the understanding of conflict and violence within environmental peace building, and to open space for different groups with different knowledges, organizations, and cosmovisions to be active agents for peace in relation to the environment and to ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara and Christy. And to wrap this session of stories, we have Emily Sample.
Hi, I am so appreciative of everything that has been shared on this panel, and absolutely in awe of the stories and the knowledge that have been shared. I joined this panel to share my own experiences as a white Western scholar who is seeking to decolonize my own research, and in doing so, encouraging other white Western trained researchers who may be intimidated or confused or worried about taking this first step, because I know that there is a lot of fear in the unknown, and in decolonization, especially for some of our older scholars. And I think it is very important to, as the previous speakers have noted, to bring white people into this conversation, because it is fundamentally their responsibility to decolonize, as it was very much their role in colonization. They are the perpetrators of this violence, and it is with their actions that there must be justice, right? So it is that is what I wanted to talk about today. But seeing as there is very little time, and honestly, the rest of this panel is so incredible, I don't want to take up any more space than white people have already taken in all of these conversations. So instead, I will choose to drop the link to the white paper that was launched this morning, that I wrote in partnership with a colleague, Regina Palaus, who is not here today, about the future of peace building in interdisciplinary justice and climate justice. And then I yield the floor back to my distinguished colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. And we've been enveloped with music from the beginning, middle, and now the end. And Chukde and I give these last 5 minutes to you to close this session, and that this conversation can continue outside of this roundtable and towards future panels and future work. And please.
I just want to give gratitude for all of the words spoken, for the organizers of this work, and for our ancestors. I want to give thanks to each and every one of our ancestors, everybody. I always want to speak of our indigenousness, and that we're all from Mother Earth, and we were indigenous at one time from somewhere on Mother Earth, some point in time. And I believe it's our job to get home to that, to feed that indigenous root, and to heal these violent acts of colonialism. So I'll play this song in a prayerful way for our lands here that have seen 95% degradation of ancient forest, natural, animal, and indigenous human beings in our Coast Salish territories, and for all people, for a healing medicine, that we can come together as a human family with all the flavors, all the languages, all the cultures alive within us, that we can do that together and heal this Mother Earth and our relationships. Ocean. Prayers for our water. It's a song about the sacredness of water and the healing aspect of water. And that's what we're made of. We're made of water. Trees hold water. The water moves on Mother Earth, bringing life. It's all about life and water. Ocean. Yeah, I'm thankful for this time, Haska.
Thank you, Chukden. And thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you so much to everyone who spoke and shared a story on this roundtable session. This really, honestly, it's what I've been yearning for in environmental peace building, and I'm so grateful that it's come together in this way, such a beautiful way. And because this session was really about sharing stories and having an immersive kind of experiential somatic experience with Little P environmental peace building, we've set up a breakout session in the Zoom. I'll share the link again there for anyone who wants to continue this conversation in a little bit more of a dialogue with all of the speakers today. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilan, for this.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Saini.
Awesome. Let's continue this.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you all able to make the breakout room? I know Giovanni, it's okay. I know you need to go to bed, and Thomas and probably Archana. Everyone is welcome to join.
Okay. The break.